good afternoon to you. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if you've been watching the, I think it's the inauguration has happened, possibly. I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen any news today, but anyway, you might well have been following it. But it's lovely to see you, and I'd love to. Oh, it's happening now. Oh, thanks, Brian. Sorry about that. That was bad timing. Well, I'm delighted to introduce you to Sarah Marshall, who is the absolute living expert on Cornwall, and particularly Poldark. Our guests that she has looked after to bring the whole Poldark scenery to life have just absolutely loved the time that they've spent with her. Because not only is she incredibly knowledgeable, she's very entertaining as well, as you will see. So I'm bigging you up, Sarah.
Quite great indeed. I've got a lot to live up to now.
So you'll have lots of fun listening to Sarah. So let's just get this. I shouldn't try and do this without my glasses. Right, there we go. So, as you well know, we always only work with the very best to ensure that your clients come back absolutely wowed by their time in the UK, and the Poldark experience down in Cornwall is absolutely no difference to that whatsoever. And just a little reminder, actually, if they want to do a little Poldark stop on their way down to Cornwall or on their way back up, Chavenage House, just outside Tetbury in Gloucestershire, we did a tea and training about Chavenage, serves as Poldark's house, which Sarah will remind me of the name of in the series.
Trenwith.
Trenwith, thank you. So it is fabulous because you see Poldark on his horse riding out through the gates, and then suddenly he's in the Cornish landscape. He's not in Gloucestershire at all, but it all, you know, those film people all make it work. But that's an option to go up and down. But I know from quite a few guests that we've had who have asked to do a couple of days, 4 days, up to a week even, down in Cornwall to really sort of relive some of the fabulous locations that are down there. So I hope you are inspired to suggest the same to some of your clients when we've been through this. So Sarah, just sort of summarising a little bit about the different parts of this sort of rather long and funny shaped county of Cornwall.
Yeah, so Cornwall is obviously the most westerly part of the UK, next to America from where we are. Geographically, it's really quite a small county. It's only 60 miles from the border from Devon down to Penzance, but it's a really fascinating county because if you look at this little sort of thing we've got here, where you've got west, north, and south, it's so different geographically. So the north's very wild, it's the big Atlantic cliffs and the Atlantic Ocean. South coast is the English Channel, so it's much quieter. There's palm trees, and it's much more sedate really on the south coast. And then you get to the furthest west point, where everything becomes much narrower as it goes down, much sleepier. The lanes get extremely small, and West Cornwall is my favourite part of Cornwall completely. It's where you kind of step back in time and you have the little fishing villages, the fishing harbours. You've got all the mine. That's real mining country down there. So yeah, we're looking at the pictures of West Cornwall. So when I devised the 3 tours for Cornish Welcome Tour, which was a company that I worked with my dad, Poldark started filming down here about six years ago now, I think. And we watched the first episode on the Sunday night, and I phoned my dad up afterwards and I said, Dad, we need to do some Poldark tours. We need to get right in. I'm devising some tours, you know, this is going to take off and it's going to be huge. So I split it into 3, sort of a 3-day tour, to make it sort of not too long if people wanted to just kind of a quick stop down in Cornwall. But what we found was that having devised these 3 days, that we were getting people coming and saying, you know, we want to do the Poldark thing, but actually we want to stay for 4 or 5 days. So we would then incorporate other parts of Cornwall, say, okay, well, we could do 5 days just of filming locations, bring in some other programs, but we could just give you a historical tour of Cornwall. You know, we can take it as far as you want to go, really. But the West Cornwall tour, which is definitely the most popular, I'd say 80% of people, you know, want to do West Cornwall. Our tours sort of last 9 to 10 hours a day. It's, you know, it is a long day because there's so much to pack in and so much to see. But you're actually, so this tour that you're looking at here, which is actually, you've got 4 locations, it's actually only about a 20, once you get down, it's about a 25-mile radius. So like, and you do that in about 9 hours, which sounds an enormously long time, but there's so much to see. We actually start off trying to throw in some other bits of Cornwall incorporated into the day. So we'd start off at St Michael's Mount, which I don't know if you've heard of, Mont Saint Michel in Brittany. We have the Cornish equivalent of that, sitting out on an island just off Mounts Bay, and it's absolutely stunning, and it's one of the first things that people see when we get out of the car and we do a coffee stop. And sitting out on the bay is this incredible Disney-like castle. And then we drive along through Penzance, through Mousel, through all the little tiny little villages, and then first real stop is the photo that you see in the top left, which is the Minack Theatre. And people might say, well, the Minack Theatre, what's that got to do with Poldark? But if you, behind where you can see on the photo there, is actually the beach. It's in the bottom right hand corner, which is Porthcurno, where they filmed a lot of the Poldark scenes of Ross and Demelza walking along the beach hand in hand. And we always say, look, if you're coming to Cornwall, you have to do the Minack Theatre. Whether you're coming on a film location tour or not, come to the Minack. It will take your breath away. It's absolutely, you know, it's an astounding feat of engineering, if nothing else. But it's basically a theatre that's built into the cliffside, that was built by one lady and her gardener. She started it before the Second World War, and it just kind of evolved. And it's a working theatre today. They have performances through from April to October. We've had clients who've come to stay, and we've got them tickets for operas, and it's really magical, you know, having a day out and then ending up sitting watching an open air performance. And just the scenery there is just so stunning. You know, you'd think you'd be in the Caribbean, actually. Crystal clear waters, you know, just beautiful. The amount of people who go around the corner and they just literally gasp. It's, you know, it's just beautiful. And then that part of Cornwall as well, Poldark wise, is really where all the mining history is. So 18th and 19th century, you know, Cornwall was all about mining. When Winston Graham wrote the books, you know, he lived down here. He moved down here as a boy, and he was fascinated by mining history. And, you know, the historical content in his books is, you know, it's so accurate. And when Mammoth Productions started filming Poldark, they said, you know, there's no way we're doing this on a film set. There's no way we're doing it up in Bristol. You know, we're going to Cornwall to film these. So the bottom left picture you can see is Botalic Mines, which is part of the Tin Coast. They call that section the Tin Coast in Cornwall. And then once a year, the BBC and Mammoth turn up and take over Botalic Mines. But because it's an AONB, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty, you know, they were really limited as to what they could actually do with these ruins of the mines. So a lot of it was CGI'd, but they would bring sort of wooden structures and take over parts of the landscape and do what they were allowed to do, and the rest of it was CGI'd afterwards. But the engine house you can see there, this is called the Crown's Engines House, and that was actually Francis Poldark's mine, the ill-fated mine that he didn't have for very long. But they actually filmed that down there, not quite sure how. But so we stop off at all these places. A lot of it's very outdoorsy, you know, although it's a 9-hour, let's say a one-day tour could take 9 hours, you know, there's a lot of getting out of the vehicle, a lot of walking around, along the cliffs, on the beaches, you know, exploring, which everybody absolutely loves. All thrown in with a very nice lunch somewhere. You know, we have some very nice lunch stops. So
that's all important.
Very important, yes.
And an
very
afternoon
important
tea at some point as well.
Yes. Oh no, definitely a cream tea. Yes, a Cornish cream tea at the end of the afternoon. We found this fantastic. I found this fantastic farmhouse about 6 years ago between St Ives and Batalic. You wouldn't even know it was there. And she just does the most incredible cream teas. So we'd sort of say to clients, you know, is anyone sort of hungry after lunch? We'll pull over, and the scones are coming out of the Arga, and you know, you're sitting overlooking the Atlantic, and you know, it's just amazing. But talking about North Cornwall, although it very much features in all the Poldark locations, Holywell Bay, which was probably one of the most widely used locations from series 3 onwards, sort of vast expanse of the beach with the caves. I don't know if everybody sort of watched Poldark, but Holywell Bay, Porthcothan, which doubles up as Nampara Bay. What I like to try and do, or what we find a lot of our American clients, if they've watched Poldark on PBS, most of them have watched Doc Martin as well. I know, which is absolutely huge in the States. You know, it's a really, really popular series. So we like to say to people, okay, so if you're coming to do Poldark, you know, why don't we incorporate some Doc Martin as well? So we can tie the two in together, which is really nice, because Doc Martin's obviously very different to Poldark. It's not a historical series, sort of set in the modern day. But it's filmed in the most beautiful little place called Port Isaac, which you can see obviously in the top left photo and the bottom one. And before Doc Martin appeared on the screens, Port Isaac had never been heard of. You know, it was just a sleepy little fishing harbour, still fully working today. And when they're filming, life just carries on as normal, as much as it can, with a massive film crew there. I've been there on numerous occasions when they've been filming, and they're fantastic. You know, they let the public get as close as they want, really. And you'll often see Martin Clune sort of walking around the streets, and he's lovely, absolutely lovely. So yeah, so it's nice to get a bit of sort of mixing the two in, because you know, Cornwall is a huge film destination for you know, a lot of filming goes on down here. North Cornwall, also famous King Arthur. It's King Arthur land. You know, it's one of the things I love about Cornwall so much is, you know, the history down here is just, you know, it's just fascinating. But the bottom right photo you can see is Tintagel, where they literally just built that bridge. I think they only built it 2 years ago. Is it 2 years ago? Before that, you had to do 400 steps down and up to get up to the actual island. And now they've very kindly built a walkway over from the mainland.
Can't wait to do it, actually.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. And then there's a statue of Arthur, this fantastic statue in the middle of the island. So you know, what's so lovely is that, you know, clients might say, you know, we just want to come doing Poldark, but we can sort of tease them with you know, with other things as well. And you can so easily turn a 3-day tour down here into 5-6 days, and you still wouldn't have seen enough. It's amazing, really. You know, it's we used to have clients that, you know, I think we had one couple from I think they were from Oregon, and they came 4 years in a row. They just couldn't get enough of it. You know, they came back every single year. We just did different itineraries, you know, every time they came. So yeah, moving down to South Cornwall, you have Charlestown Harbour in the top left-hand corner, which it's a Georgian harbour, which really hasn't changed at all in the last 300 years. It's one of those places where you know, you park your car, you walk down to the harbour, and you'd think you'd walked back in time. There's nothing to indicate that you're in modern times. And I think when they filmed, they chose that as the double for Truro Harbour, because Truro in the 18th century would have had its own harbour, but then it all dried up and it's not working anymore. There's the remains of it, but there was no filming to go on, so they chose Charlestown instead. The tall rig ships are always in. And so the harbour walls you can see down the bottom, I've been there again when they've been filming Poldark, and it's just fantastic seeing all these people walking around in costumes, and then there's barrels of rum, and you know, Aidan Turner walking along the harbour front on the stone wall. It's fantastic. But it's been used for lots of other filming. I think it was used quite a lot in the 1970s and 1980s for, you know, for films and things. And then you can see we've got like little fishing villages. We've got Cadgwith Cove, Porthleven, and then bottom right you've got Truro, which is the capital of Cornwall, with the most beautiful cathedral. And what we always try and do is that we always have our sort of plan B for our tours. So the weather down here can be, the sun doesn't always shine. We're lucky most of the time, but you know, sometimes you have days when the sea mist comes in and you know it's been raining and you're thinking, actually we're going to have to exclude something today because there's just no point in taking somebody somewhere if they're not going to see anything. So Truro is a fantastic backup plan for a good day out, with the cathedral, Georgian streets, lovely restaurants, things like that. So I think you can see from the photos, you know, it's the variety down here is immense, really, with, you know, with what we've got to offer. Gardens, going on to gardens, yeah. A lot of people would like to come. We have clients who come and say, you know, we just want to spend 5 days, 6 days just going around historical houses and gardens. Yeah. Absolutely blessed down here. We've got a bit of a tropical climate. The further west you go, certainly the milder it is. And you have the Lost Gardens of Heligan, which are absolutely, you know, astounding. Not that many people have heard of them, really. Everyone's heard of the Eden Project. But the Lost Gardens of Heligan were only discovered in, I think, the early 1980s. Yeah. And it's a house that, with these astonishing gardens. They've got a little rainforest. They've got the tropical gardens. They've got amazing magnolias, camellias, you know, world famous. And at the outset of World War One, obviously all the men went off to war. And everything just shut down. The whole house closed down, the gardens closed down, and it was almost like something out of a film, really, with, you know, the walls were covered with ivy, the fences, the gates, you wouldn't even have known it was there, it was hidden. And it was discovered sort of 50 years later. And it's been brought back to life. And they even have in the potting sheds, you know, the mugs of tea that were left in 1914, that, you know, the tools that were just put down and left. And it's a fabulous day out. So you've got Heligan, you have Glendurgan, Trelissick. Bottom right hand corner is Coat Heel House, which is up not too far from where I live, actually, on the banks of the River Tamar. The River Tamar spans from the north of Cornwall down to Plymouth. It goes out into Plymouth Sound. It's about 25, 26 miles along the river. And Coat Heel is, I'm trying to think which period it is. It's Henry VIII's period. So it's Tudor, isn't it? I think it's Tudor. And it has, again, beautiful gardens. It's National Trust property, so it's open, you know, between April and October, so you can go around the house. So clients, you know, some people want to come and literally just want to do gardens and houses, and easily done in 5 days. A huge amount to see, really. This just gives you sort of, if you want to go on to the itineraries. So just to give you some sort of idea of sort of what we would do in a day, we generally pick our clients up from their accommodation about 9 o'clock in the morning, you know, so they have time for a nice breakfast. Start in Charlestown, great place to go, have a mooch around the harbour, talk about the history, the filming, have a great cup of coffee down by the harbour. I know, fantastic place for a cup of coffee. So we could spend maybe an hour there, and then head on into Truro or pass through Truro, maybe stop for lunch, look at the cathedral. all of our tours, and Sam, you probably find this, you know, with all the tours that you do, that what we say to people is that we give people a generic tour and we say, this is what we would suggest, but we're absolutely adaptable. You know, if you want to change anything, or if there's somewhere that you absolutely know that you want to see, we'll fit it in, you know, if we can, or we will adapt our tours to suit the individual client. So, you know, we can tweak things as we go along.
Yeah,
and then, you know, after a lovely lunch somewhere, we'll go down to Trelisic, which was one of the gardens actually we saw in one of the previous photos. But you go down past Truro and you get on the King Harry ferry. So it's a little car ferry. You go over the estuary, over the river. It's absolutely beautiful. And then you get to the Roseland, which is probably the most unknown places in Cornwall. The Roseland Peninsula, it's very sleepy, very quiet, and quite inaccessible, which I think is why it's not really a huge tourist destination. You have some of the best hotels in Cornwall down on the Roseland. I know the clients of yours, Sam, that I was with a few years ago, we stayed down there. A fabulous hotel, absolutely lovely. It might go to St Mawes, have lunch overlooking the harbour at the Idle Rocks, end the day with a cocktail before we head back. You know, it's yeah, a lot of fun. Yeah, so you know, it's as much or as little as anybody wants to do, really. We have some people absolutely exhausted at the end of 4 or 5 days, but just, you know, having been immersed in this wonderful culture and history and scenery. I think it's the scenery that takes, you know, takes people's breaths away.
And the rather narrow roads as well.
Oh yeah, and I think, you know, that's the beauty as well of doing these. You know, if you're doing a drive, you know, some people do want to come and you know, drive themselves. Very few actually, and actually very few of our American clients, you know, once they've got in the car or in the vehicle, you know, with us, as I said, you go further west and the lanes get narrower and people actually start holding their breath. It's quite funny, they actually start holding their breath as we go down some of the lanes, and that, you know, because they're not used to it, you know, they're not used to roads where you actually have to stop and you see someone coming half a mile ahead and you're thinking, okay, who's going to pass the other person? But no, we use very experienced drivers and local people, which I think is really important. Yeah, people don't like driving themselves, and actually don't get to see things if they're driving. So no, so we take all the hard work out of it for them.
And I know a driver that chauffeured one of our groups around with you.
Yes.
I think he's one of the Poldark drivers, isn't he?
Yes, yeah, he was in I think in series 1 or 2. Yeah, they I know quite a few people who've done that actually when they were filming down here. So would go and pick up the actors from wherever they were staying, because they wouldn't be staying because the film locations are all so spaced out around Cornwall. So one day they might be filming down in Batalic and they might be there for 2 days, and then the next day they may be up on Bodmin Moor, in the wilds, and they're absolutely, you know, miles from anywhere, filming at what's supposed to be Ross Poldark's house, but that might be 25 miles from where their hotel is. So I know quite a few of the drivers who chauffeured the actors around, Ross and Demelza and the rest of them. But yeah, he said it was
some great stories.
Great fun. Yeah, great fun.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so day 2 of.
So yes, so day 2. So we've got the Godolphin Estate. Yeah, which was it's a National Trust property. It's quite far west. I'm not sure the interior is open all year round, but it was they used it as certainly the exterior for Francis Poldark's house. Again, it's beautiful, and the gardens are, you know, absolutely stunning. It's down near Helston, so we could stop off there and then head on down to the Lizard Peninsula, which again is another quiet sort of sleepy area. I was speaking to somebody who was one of the location scouts when Mammoth approached her and said, you know, we want to come and film Poldark, you know, we want a fantastic job, you know, find us the location. So she just spent a year, you know, finding all these off the beaten places, you know, off the beaten track, where they knew that they wouldn't be sort of bombarded by, you know, people, because once the show took off, and it, you know, it really became very big very quickly. So series 1, they could film in absolute secrecy and nobody knew what they were doing, and nobody batted an eyelid. You know, by series 3, that was when you had the paparazzi, and that's when you had the security men, and, you know, everyone wanted to see Aidan Turner, and, you know, so you just had thousands of people descended on Cornwall just to see the filming taking place. But the locations they found that around the Lizard were great, because I'd never heard of half of them before, you know, before they filmed Poldark. But we go down to Dollar Cove and Gunwallow, which is where they filmed all the nighttime shipwreck scenes. There's a beautiful little church, stunning little church. It's called the Church of the Storms, on the side of the beach. And when you get down there, you understand why. And they filmed some stuff down there. So there's a lot of sort of wandering on beaches, walking on cliff paths. You know, the pub that we always go to, there's Hal Zephyrin Inn, steeped in pirates and smuggling. You know, smuggling was huge down here in the 18th, 19th century. And the pub we go to, this fantastic gastropub, and there's a secret tunnel which leads down to the beach, which would have been the same beach where the Queen Charlotte was shipwrecked in Poldark. So yeah, so we'll spend some time down at Gunwallow, and then head on down to Kynance Cove. Kynance Cove, one of those photograph places in Cornwall. You can only get on the beach when the tide's out. It's really, really beautiful. Yeah, so we just, you know, we sort of mooch. I like to call it mooching. You know, we mooch around the lanes and just exploring, really, and finding lots of lovely places to take people.
Perfect. Sounds
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, so this is our West Cornwall tour. I talked about the Minack, so you go down to the Minack Theatre, look down at Porthcurno, then onto Porthgwara, which is the photo you can just see on the right hand side with the boats. And that, for those who've seen Poldark, that's the famous little cove where Aidan Turner stripped off and was skinny dipping. Most of our female clients, funnily enough, want to go and see that little place. But it is really, really beautiful. It's really lovely. There's 2 beaches there. The beach you can see on the right hand side with this really steep slipway going down, and then there's the caves on the left hand side, which they used to film when Mark, I can't think of his surname now, but when he was trying to escape to France and he was hiding in the boat and Ross was helping him escape to France. They used the caves there with his little boat in there, and you can walk up through the tunnels up to the other side of the cove, and it's a place, you know, you can be sitting at the top and suddenly you'll see hundreds of seals in the water in front of you, and people bird watching, and there's gannets, and, you know, if you're lucky you might get to see basking sharks. You know, it's very beautiful. So we go on to Porthgwara, not somewhere you'd find if you didn't know where it was, which is why it's useful to have a guide with you, I think. And then we'd go for lunch up through St Just, and then head on to Potalic, to the mines, get out and have a good 1/4 mile walk up to Wheel Owls to look at Ross's mine. Talk about some of the mining history. They've got a fantastic, actually, Poldark exhibition there, and they show you how they filmed it, and it's really interesting. And then we'd end the day by travelling up the Tin Coast past some more mines, Geaver, which is the only working mine still in Cornwall, and end the day at St Ives, which is, I think, probably the most picturesque town. Overrun with visitors in the summer. I mean, it is, I wouldn't go near it in July and August because it's so beautiful, and, you know, that's where everyone goes on holiday. But the rest of the year, you know, it's a really lovely place to go. We've got the Tate Art Gallery there, very, very famous for art, sculptures. A lot of people come down.
This painting behind me was painted by a St Ives artist.
The light, there's something really fabulous about the light in West Cornwall. And in the 1920s, they set up the Newlyn School of Art just outside Penzance. So people used to come down on these painting holidays because it's something to do with the colour of the water, apparently. And the light is just fantastic for painting. So there's a real art movement down here.
Yeah.
Again, some people want to come and do art galleries. So yeah, end up in St Ives after an ice cream tea. Have a little look around, a little cobbled fishermen, the streets with the fishermen's cottages and things, and then head on back to the hotel, wherever that might be, or wherever people might be staying.
Talking of which,
yeah, we're really blessed down here. We have some fantastic accommodation. Everything from boutique bed and breakfasts to 5-star. Like the Scarlet. Funny enough, I stayed at the Scarlet for Christmas. I went there on Christmas Day. And it was absolutely amazing. It's really, we had a storm. Was it Storm Bella on Boxing Day? Yeah. I think it was Storm Bella. Yeah. Well, I was actually sitting in a cliff top hot tub during Storm Bella on the edge of the cliff. It was amazing. With the 60-mile-an-hour winds behind me, and they were bringing us glasses of Prosecco, and it was fabulous. Yeah, we're really blessed with really great accommodation. The Nair, which I think some of your clients have stayed at before.
They love that. They love the family feel.
It can only describe it really. It's very Agatha Christie to me, and if I trying to evoke that kind of 1920s, 1930s quintessentially English. It's got a private beach, very British. The service is incredible. They went, nothing was too much trouble. I had this. I was struggling to find somewhere for lunch when we did the West Cornwall tour, just for the way the itinerary fitted and the standard of sort of restaurant that the clients wanted. I was thinking, crikey, how am I going to find? They didn't want a gastropub. They wanted something, I said, we're going to struggle with this. So actually the Nair were incredible, and they put on a luxury picnic for us. And it was, I've never had anything like it, but we took this picnic and we sat on the cliff top above the Minack Theatre. The sun was shining, the sky, the sea was blue. And in front of us, we had lobster and smoked salmon and champagne and strawberries and fruitcake, and it was absolutely unbelievable. And the client said, he said afterwards, that was one of the highlights of their trip. Just to be sitting, overlooking the Atlantic above the Minack Theatre with this luxury picnic. And the Nair, they were incredible. They put on a private screening of Poldark for us one evening. They turned the library into a little home cinema for us, because they'd missed the episode on the Sunday because they were traveling. So that's the Nair, that's the service you get there. Carbis Bay Hotel, that's going to be, so Carbis Bay is when they're going to be holding the G7 summit. So in June, that's where they're turning Carbis Bay into the world leaders are all descending. And I think that's the one you can see on the photograph there. Is that Carbis Bay? Yeah, I think that's Carbis Bay. It's a very modern hotel. Yeah. We have every standard of accommodation here. And
also all the beautiful luxury rentals are.
Oh, and self-catering, yeah.
Absolutely stunning, but with chefs and drivers and everything else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can arrange anything down here. We've had clients before that've done self-catering, and again, want a private chef. I know, I'm a big foodie myself. I'm very into, the gourmet, and I have some friends who are chefs, and I've hired them before. So that, that's no problem at all. If people want their own swimming pools or, whatever, hot tubs, it can all be arranged.
It's all there, isn't it?
Yeah, and getting here, I think everybody sort of shies away a little bit from thinking, oh gosh, it must be so inaccessible. It's so hard to get to. It's miles from anywhere. And Brits, for us, because we live in such a small country, for us, a 3-hour journey seems like, a lifetime, doesn't it? Or the thought of going from Wales to Cornwall is like, oh, it would take a day to get there. Thing for Americans is that, traveling for them is from one side of America to the other is, it's fast. So when I say to people, actually, the best way to get here, if you're coming, if you're coming from the States and you want to do a stopover in London for a few days, bit of sightseeing, immerse yourself in the capital, you know, quite full on, get yourself on a train at Paddington, we'll book you some first class tickets and we'll pick you up in Exeter, 2.5 hours on the train. You can have a beautiful lunch on the way down. Yeah. We pick them up. And then we drive them the rest of the way to Cornwall, because you can shave about 3.5 hours off the train journey, because once you get to Plymouth, the train speed halves. So rather than going 100 miles an hour, it suddenly goes 50 miles an hour, because everything in Cornwall is quite sleepy. So we say to people, if you want to, you know, get to Cornwall a bit quicker, we'll pick you up in Exeter and we'll take you the scenic route. So we'll get off the highways, get off the motorway. We'll take them over Dartmoor, which is a national park. Absolutely beautiful. It's Hound of the I call it the Hound of the Baskervilles land. It's where it's real Sherlock Holmes, you know, open moorland. So we'll take them the scenic route down via Tavistock, over the Tamar and into Cornwall, and then drive them onto their accommodation. And it's actually quite nice, because I think they feel like they're getting a bit more for their money, because they're actually getting a bit more of the tour, even if it's the day we're picking them up. But they're also getting a nice introduction to Devon as well. So we've had clients who have come to Cornwall for 5-6 days, and they said, actually, can we come back next year and we want to do Devon instead? Very different to Cornwall, equally as, maybe not as beautiful, but I'm biased. No, it's very beautiful, very different. So yeah, we like to incorporate a bit of a Devon as well. But again, some people are happy to be picked up in London. You know, we send a driver up. Yeah. And then they can stop off at Stonehenge on the way down, or Wells, Bath. You know, you could do a night stopover if you want to stop in Bath for a night, and then, you know, carry on down.
As part of an itinerary to take in the sort of Hampshire, Dorset, South Cotswolds.
I mean, yeah, you could
down and then come back up via North Cotswolds and Chiltern.
I mean, we've had other clients who have come and wanted to do. They've done 3 or 4 days in the Cotswolds with, you know, a driver guide up there who've done their own itinerary, and we say, okay, they then drive them down to Exeter or Bristol. We meet them there, and then we continue with the Cornwall part. So you can incorporate other parts of the British Isles as well, you know, where we can work with other people to, you know, to meet people halfway somewhere. But we're also very lucky that we have a couple of airports. We've got Newquay, which has flights from London, but also has direct flights from Dublin, which is great. You know, if people are coming from the US and they maybe don't want to do London, you know, they've done London before and they just want to get to Cornwall. You can just fly to Dublin from the States and then get a transfer to Newquay and get straight to Cornwall, or Exeter.
And as you said, it's July and August, probably. I mean, there are quieter places, aren't they? But
yeah, we really, and I think we found as well, majority of our clients, people traveling without children, you know, so they can come any time of the year. You know, they're not sort of tied by school holidays, things like that. So busiest months, certainly May and June, September and October for tours, most popular time to come. Cornwall's most stunning in May and June. You know, when late spring, you know, it's when the gardens look the best. Accommodation, you've got more choice. But yeah, I would definitely say avoid this, you know, that's 6 weeks, actually 8 weeks, because the private schools, I guess, break up beginning of July. So July and August, we don't recommend to people. I was trying to read, so it's Islands Gardens if they tied. I mean, Ireland actually very similar, geographically very similar to Cornwall. You know, it's Cornwall's a Celtic county. So yeah, it's very similar to Ireland. So, you know, if people were coming to do gardens in Ireland, then you could tie that in with Cornwall really nicely, actually. Come, you know, do Dublin and round there, and then fly on down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be a great thing to do. So yeah, so that's kind of Cornwall in a nutshell. I mean, I could talk for hours, and I should probably tell I can talk for hours, but I love it. You know, I'm passionate about the place. I've lived down here now. My parents moved down here nearly 40 years ago, but I lived in London for a very long time. But I've lived down here for now 14 years, and have been, you know, in doing tourism, doing this sort of thing for the last 8 years. Yeah, I just love it. I think I'm very blessed to live here, very lucky, and just love showing people, you know, sharing it with people.
And they love you showing it to them. And as I said, Sarah, you know, you are, all of our clients who've met you and spent time with you have had a wonderful time.
Yeah, and you know what I love is that so many of them leave us friends. You know, I still get emails from people, and you know, Christmas messages, and you know, 5-6 years later, you know, I'm still friends with people, and it's, you know, it's really, really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well,
also about it.
thank you so much. That was
You're very welcome.
and I know there's so much to sort of see and
So much, yeah.
and talk about and so on, but it's been brilliant just to have a sort of
Snapshot.
a snapshot. Thanks, Ginger, very much. So thank you, Sarah. You're
very welcome, very welcome. Yeah,
you're a star. Thank you.
okay.
So thank you so much for joining us again. I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of Aidan Turner and the beauty of Poldark. So we've pushed back what we should have been doing this week, and road trips in the UK are a little bit different to road trips in the US, because we haven't got quite as far to go. But they are fun, nevertheless. So we are going to be talking about the Great West Way and all sorts of fabulous, fabulous road trips next week. So really hope you can join us. And thanks so much for being here today. It's been lovely to see you, and look after yourselves. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.